This is The Jason Jones Show, powered by Mudhouse Media. Now, here's Jason Jones.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to The Jason Jones Show. I am your host, Jason Jones, broadcasting from the beautiful hill country of Texas. I have done the math. It is advanced math. This is day 10 of our celebration of the overturning of Roe, with 49 days in a row of podcasts. I could say 49 days or so in a row because we're not going to do, it's probably be over 53 days, guys. To be honest, producers got a vacation, things like that, church on Sunday, guests cancel. So 49 days in a row or so, we're going to do shows celebrating the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Now, our next guest he's going to laugh at what I'm about to say, but I believe that our next guest is not only one of the most important voices in the pro-life movement over the past 50 years, but maybe one of the most consequential Americans in the history of our republic. I'm going to put it on mute because he's going to try to interrupt the introduction because he's a humble guy. But I believe this. And his name is Bryan Kemper. He founded an organization, co-founded with his friend Eric Whittington in the 90s, an organization called Rock for Life, then went on to found an organization called Stand True Ministries. But what our next guest did was effectively harness the natural pro-life sentiment in young people at a very challenging time. And I'll ask him, I don't know who he looked up to because he's who I looked up to as a young student in the early and mid-90s as an example of courage and that I could have success as a young person. Now I'm 50, but I was 20 then. You know, as a young person on a college campus, I could have success because actually that sentiment, I believe, it's always there in young people, but they're being indoctrinated and bullied. And so Bryan Kemper founded Rock for Life. And then not only did he find a young way for young people to express their pro-life sentiment, he kind of turned his own little clique, with his passion for music, into being at the tip of the spear of the pro-life movement. So this is going to be our guest. You're going to want to listen to the show. You know, if you're the intern at the Alan Guttmacher Institute, this is an important show for you to take notes and write a good report to your supervisors. Because if you're listening to this 49 days in a row, there are going to be some episodes that give you a glimpse at the pro-life movement that the left has tried to ignore. And the authentic pro-life sentiment coming from various places in our society and youth culture over the past 50 years has been ignored. So today's an important show. This episode is being brought to you by MyPillow.com. Go to MyPillow.com and use the code Jones. You want some pillows. It's like 110 degrees right now in Texas. And if you don't have MyPillow, you're waking up all night long flip-flopping that pillow because it gets hot, see? But MyPillow, it doesn't do that. So go to MyPillow.com, use the code Jones, get the pillow, get the Giza Dream Sheets, get the slippers, get the bathrobes, get it all, mattress topper, with that deep discount with the code Jones. Also, the first thing you should do every morning is go to Epoch Times. Be a subscriber, get the digital and print subscription. That's what I have done. And that way I can share it with my family, my friends, my neighbors on social media. Go to ireadepoch.com. Use the code Jason Jones, and you'll get their best price on that subscription. And as always, this show's main sponsor, the Vulnerable People Project, standing in solidarity with the most vulnerable people in the world when it's most challenging. And we have never been more overwhelmed than this year with opportunities to help suffering people. From Afghanistan, Chinese-occupied East Turkestan, and Pakistan, in Ukraine, we're there, and we need your help. Go to thegreatcampaign.org, see all that we are doing, and join the team by becoming a monthly donor. All right, here we go. My interview with the wonderful Bryan Kemper on the Jason Jones Show. Bryan Kemper, welcome to the Jason Jones Show.
Dude, what an honor to be here. I even gave up a tea time to do your show today.
Well, no, it's your fault. Can we be honest? It's kind of my fault. It's our fault. Let's take it.
Dude, you know what? It's all good. It's all good. I can hit golf balls any day. How often do I get to do this? The Jason Jones Show. Come on now.
You could do it every day. You want to be my co-host? You could do it every day.
Oh, dude. Oh, I'd love it. You and I, you've done Pro-Life is the New Punk Rock. I think we do a great show together. It's such an honor. I really appreciate you and your voice and what you've done in the movie and entertainment community the same way that I did with music and punk rock and such. So you're up there with me.
Well, brother, and that's the thing, right? So I founded Movie to Movement after I was an interim director of Rock for Life when you stepped away. And it was your organization, Rock for Life, and an open letter to the conservative movement that Paul Weyrich wrote in 1999. And that's when I decided that I would, as a citizen of a constitutional republic, work to change laws, but that I really wanted to be involved in changing culture. And
absolutely.
And you started, so you founded Rock for Life. So let's start from the beginning, because there's so much I want to talk to you about. But the pro-life movement today, let me just set it up, and you can disagree with me. But it's a youth-driven movement today. It's youth-driven, but this wasn't always the case. And I think there was always pro-life sentiment, but no way for it to express itself. And then in the early 90s, you founded Rock for Life. And tell us how that happened, because it seems kind of strange.
Okay. Well, Jason, to understand me and my podcast, my new book, it's called Pro-Life is the New Punk Rock. That's sort of been my calling card for a while, bringing that punk rock attitude into the pro-life movement. Because when I was young, I was this picked on little kid at school, and if you went to a punk show, everybody was equal. Everybody loved you. It didn't matter if you were that nerdy, picked on, bullied kid, which I was. But for me, I got into also the drug lifestyle. The house I lived at with my dad, like I ran away for 2 weeks once, and he literally did not know I was gone. That's the kind of thing that I was raised in, and ended up on the streets.
Now, was it your dad was just overwhelmed with life, irresponsible, working hard? What was it?
It was a bunch of stuff and no relationship. We didn't know how to have a relationship. I only met my dad when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
I had been with another guy who I thought was my dad, and I found out he adopted me, and he pretty much kind of stepped out of my life. And so my dad and I didn't know. Now, I love my father. We have a great relationship now, but back then it was pretty bad. When I ran away for 2 weeks, I walked up the driveway after 2 weeks, and my dad was in the garage, and I go, "Hey, I'm back." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't hear you leave this morning." And I had been gone for 2 weeks. So I ended up on the streets and all of that. In 1987, I went to a Grateful Dead Bob Dylan concert, Anaheim Stadium, where the Angels play. And I did so many drugs that day, Jason. I shouldn't be alive, let alone have a memory of it. I mean, we're talking meth and LSD and methadone and PCP, shrooms. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And I end up in a hospital, overdosed, having charcoal water poured down my throat by nurses to try to soak the poison out of my body. But it was a doctor who pulled me aside and just said, "Can I talk to you?" And I knew he was going to preach at me. I hated Christians, but he offered me. I asked,
so that's
"Can you
interesting.
give me a cigarette?"
Well, that's interesting. So hold on, I want to ask you. So when I was a young atheist, anti-theist, I could smell a born again Christian, a Christian a mile away.
Oh, absolutely.
So, they'd have this and it was something attractive, but it repulsed me. It made me angry. So
it was attractive because they wanted it, but then once they opened their mouth and spewed at you, it made me hate.
I remember once saying to a substitute teacher, you're a Christian, aren't you? You're one of those born again Christians, aren't you? She said, "Yeah, why?" I'm like, "Well, you have such, there's like a light behind your eyes, and you just always seem happy." Which is what I saw, but then in my head, I'm like, idiot.
Well, see, that's what I said. I saw this joy that they had, and I didn't believe that joy truly existed. I thought it was fake.
So you thought that they were like
human.
tricking themselves and trying to trick you?
Yeah, like you can't have that kind of joy. But this doctor, he took me outside, got me a cigarette, and just when I thought he was about to preach at me and tell me how evil I am and how I need to repent and all the stuff I hear every time, all he told me was how much God loved me and valued me and that I was valuable to God. And that just kind of blew my mind, Jason. And I left that hospital. I went down to Belmont Shores, Long Beach, California. About an hour away, I went swimming out in the ocean in the harbor because I love water, and that was kind of getting me down from everything that I experienced. And this boat pulls up, and the guy in the boat starts talking to me and goes, "You were at the Grateful Dead concert." I'm like, "How do you know this?" He goes, "I'm the fireman that found you and put you in an ambulance."
Whoa.
And then he looked down and he goes, "Do you know how much God loves you and how much he values you?" And I was blown away, Jason. Like almost the exact same words. No one told me how evil I was. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody shamed me. What they did is they just loved me. And it just reminds me, Jason, we both probably have just heard about this guy that founded a Satanist church in another country, who all it was literally was a woman came up and hugged him. And I don't know if you've seen this video.
No, I haven't. Tell me about this. When was this?
This founder, it just happened like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Australia. He was a founder of the Satanist church in Australia. And this woman hugged him, and he said he felt a love that he'd never felt, like he just didn't believe it existed. And he had been a Christian years and years ago, but he said that it wasn't real. It was just, all thoughts. He felt this woman love him. And so he went back to perform a satanic ritual to try to figure out what's going on. And he said Jesus appeared to him, and he looked at Jesus and said, "If you're real, you're going to have to prove it to me." And he said he felt more love flow through his body than ever in his whole lifetime. And he just gave his life to Jesus. He totally just left the satanic church. This just happened 2 weeks ago, Jason. And that's how I felt. That's how I felt when that happened. And, it was amazing. And a week later, I'm living at a church, getting clean, going through all this. And I'm trying.
What church was that? What denomination?
This was called. It was just a non-denominational church called Set Free in Anaheim, California. And they took me in. They helped me get clean. They got me through my withdrawal stage. They got through, and I was at the church, and I was just like, I think it was some Wednesday night Bible study or something. And I was like, I asked them, and I go, "Is there any good Christian rock bands? I need some good music." And this lady hands me a tape of Amy Grant. I just kind of looked and like, oh, God, this can't be all there is. And this other kid pulled me aside.
I like Amy Grant. I liked her when I was an atheist.
Okay, that's fine. But that wasn't my jam, Jason. That wasn't my jam.
I know.
I mean, I was like, I got to find something. And this kid pulls me aside and says, "Hey, Saturday night here at the church, there's a concert." And he hands me a cassette tape of a band called The Crucified. And I listened to it. I borrowed it from him, gave it back to him, loved it. And I went to this show on Saturday night at the church. There was 4 bands, a band called Cross, another 2 metal bands, Vengeance and Deliverance, and then The Crucified. And I'm telling you, I was just going nuts. I was having so much fun. I'm listening to this band, this punk band, just talking about Christ and singing great music, and we're in the mosh pit. And Jason, I looked over and I saw this T-shirt on their booth, and it was like a demon in a noose, and it said Gal 220. And I walked over and I met the drummer's girlfriend at the time, now his wife. But at the time, it was his girlfriend. They were just out of high school, and her name is Stacy. And I'm like, what? Who is this Gal number 220? And she just laughs. She goes, "Bryan, that's Galatians 2:20. For I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives within me." And I looked at her. I'm like, that's what just happened to me. And I just got all excited, and I went back out, and I'm in the pit. And then the band kind of stops for a minute, and he explains something about this next song they're going to sing. And Jason, it was a song that they had written based off of their experience watching Bernard Nathanson's Silent Scream video. And this song was called The Silent Scream.
So what's the name of this band again?
The Crucified.
Okay, I'm writing this down here. Come on.
The Crucified out of Fresno, California.
So they're your inciting incident to Rock for Life.
Oh, absolutely. I'm listening to this song. I went back over. His girlfriend, Stacy, now his wife, explained to me the lyrics and explained to me, and instantly I'm like, I need to know more about this.
How old were you?
And this was 1987. 1987.
So you were.
So
I mean,
I was 20. I was 20 years old.
Were you responsible for an abortion? Did you know of it this time?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I remember I think at 16, a friend of mine asked me for money for an abortion, and I said no, but I didn't care. But I wasn't going to give money for it, you know?
Oh, you have to praise God you didn't do that.
Yeah. And so, but I listened to the song over and over, and then I started going to another church, and I was getting rides from a friend of mine who was involved in this thing. She called it Operation Rescue. And I was listening to her stories about how they would go to the abortion mill, and they would sit in front of the door and buy hours of time for people to be talked to. And so I through the time I was listening to all this stuff, and then it was about 1989, 1990. I was with another Christian metal band called Precious Death, and we went to a men's prayer breakfast, and then we went to a rescue. And I ended up getting arrested that day. And I knew at that moment, I'm like, I got to do this. I got to figure this out. And I was working normally 6 days a week. I called my boss. I said, hey, I can't work Saturdays anymore. I have a Saturday job. And I just started going to rescues and started going to abortion mills and started learning how to talk about abortion and how to do this. But Jason, in those early days, I'm this punk rock kid with a mohawk, tattoos, piercings. At first, people were freaked out. They didn't know what to do. They were convinced I was a pro-abort, that I was undercover. There were groups that just didn't know how to accept me at all. And so it was 1993, and I was in downtown Los Angeles, right across the street from MacArthur Park.
So you'd been doing rescues for how long at this point?
A couple of years. I had already served time in jail. You know, my longest was a month in jail. And I joined Operation Rescue's missionary program. I said, I'm going to give 1 year of my life to pro-life, and then I'm going to move on and start my rock band. That's what I was going to do. So I was going to give my 1 year to pro-life. And so my friend Ruben, Troy Newman, a few of us, we were in downtown Los Angeles. I had just walked by this guy who was passing out literally $40 off coupons in Spanish on the corner to illegal immigrants. I go into this abortion mill.
And that's normal, right? I remember they would print coupons in black neighborhoods for Planned Parenthood on the backs of McDonald's receipts.
Oh yeah, this is crazy. So this girl and I, we used to do this thing. It was called a truth team, and we would walk into the abortion mill, and she would ask for a pregnancy test. She'd go in the back, and I'd sit in the lobby, and I'd stuff all the magazines with pro-life literature and leave fetal models around the lobby. So we go into this abortion mill, Jason. There's about 20-something women in the hallway, another 20 in the waiting room, and this is in downtown Los Angeles. These are women. Most of them are illegal immigrants that are there, and this place catered to illegal immigrants. So when we walked in, these two white kids, they immediately got her in for a pregnancy test. I sat down. I'm stuffing the magazines with Spanish-speaking literature, but it's taking super long, and it never takes this long. And so I'm worried that she got caught trying to put literature in the back room. So I walk up to the counter, Jason, and I look, and right then the door behind the reception swung open, and that was the abortion room. And there was this young lady, probably 17 years old, long dark hair, laying with her head turned, tears coming out of her eyes as the abortionist was killing her baby. And it just hit me. I literally witnessed a human being murdered right in front of me. Right then, my friend came out. We walked out, and I was bawling my eyes out. We walked out, and I came out to the front, and then I saw my friends Ruben, I saw Troy Newman, all these people, and I just said, follow me. And we start running through the hallway of the abortion mill, just yelling, La migra, la migra, la migra, which means immigration. Every single woman that was waiting in the hallway and the waiting room left that abortion mill that day. And I'm praying that none of them ever came back, but it was too late for that one that I saw.
Yeah, and
so I went home.
This was covered, I remember, many years ago by the Washington Post, right?
Yes.
And the left, and a lot of folks were trying to dox you and say, well, come on, this story is really unbelievable.
But, dude, it was one of the most life-changing moments of my life, because I went home that night, and
But can you address like, you know, I always think of the person that's a skeptic that's listening. And if they've never been, this new comedian whose Netflix show was canceled because they wanted him to cut out the abortion jokes, bits. And in one of them, he talked about what a carnival the abortion clinic is, just how disgusting and chaotic and insane these. So your story like sounds unbelievable, like so much like that abortion's legal up to the moment of birth. Just there are people out there who listen. Come on, that's not. Well, yeah, that is the law, guys, in New York, Virginia. That's the law.
Jason, this story is even mild compared to some of my undercover trips into abortion mills. This one is mild. I have been into 2 different abortion mills, and I'll name the abortionist, Acapulano and Bramer. Those were the 2 that I took a young girl.
And where was this? Where was this?
This was in Los Angeles.
So this was the wild and woolly days of the rescue movement. And when you get through with this story, I want you to tell us about what the rescue movement was like.
Okay. So I take this girl. Her parents are good friends of mine. She's 14. I'm in my 20s, Jason. She's 14. I'm in my 20s. Obvious age difference. And we walk into these abortion mills and we'd say, hey, we think we're pregnant. Can we get a pregnancy test? What's the first thing someone should have done at that moment?
Call the police.
They should have called the police.
Yeah.
Not once. Never once. 2, okay, now this girl's a virgin, Jason. She's never kissed a boy in her life. Innocent, beautiful young girl, passionate about pro-life.
Is she still involved in the movement?
Her mother and her are, I believe, do some stuff with pregnancy help centers and such, yes.
Okay.
But 2 separate times, they handed us a positive pregnancy test and told her, yes, you're pregnant. For $350, we can get you in today, and no one will know. We won't report you.
Well, Carol Everett, again, I want to say to this, it sounds, if I'm a leftist listening to this, if I'm a pro-abort, I'm like, come on. But Carol Everett, who ran the largest abortion clinics in Texas at the time, came out and confessed they would, to get their numbers up, oftentimes tell young women they were pregnant when they weren't so they could get the money for an abortion. And that sounds like a horrible calumny and a lie, and no medical professional would do this. But we know, why do we think that crooks stop at abortion? We all know that there are doctors that do nothing but write scripts for opioids all day. They're always being arrested and in the news. So why does people on the left, why do people on the left go, but no doctor would tell a girl she's pregnant when she's not? Well, would any doctor overprescribe deadly opioid drugs? What happens all day, every day? There's script mills in every city across America. So why do we know
that Gosnell, an abortionist, was one of those writing those prescription drugs, and that's how he got caught.
That's a good point. That's how he got caught, because it was a drug investigation, not because abortion. Because women, they don't care about women. So these abortion mills are run. They're like this comedian on Netflix said. They're circuses, and so your story, which sounds unbelievable, is actually very believable when you know what a circus that these places are.
And Jason, this was before, like, Lila Rose and these people, David Daleiden, have technology. Mark Crutcher, they have this technology to get this under. We didn't back then. We didn't even think about it. We just went in to do it. And all we cared about is if we could save one baby's life, whatever happened to us, it didn't matter. And we got to see thousands upon thousands of babies' lives saved through the rescue movement. I've been able to rescue across this country. I've rescued in Australia. And then I have seen so many women change their mind and so many lives saved because of that, Jason. And even if all of this for 35 years I've been doing resulted in one life saved, it's still worth it.
So I want to talk about the rescue movement because I see the pro-life movement success in 3 main axial periods. So there was the rescue movement, which was when, well, I would say maybe first would be when Reagan grabbed the pro-life banner, and Francis Schaeffer and C. Everett Koop brought the evangelicals into the pro-life movement, and then Reagan courageously ran. So I would say that's number one. Of course, the birth of the pro-life movement through Catholics, and then you would have 10 years later, the evangelicals showed up thanks to Francis Schaeffer, C. Everett Koop, Reagan, Pat Robertson, and others. Phyllis Schlafly, even though she was
Mildred
Catholic.
Jefferson.
Mildred Jefferson. But Mildred and Phyllis was Mildred Catholic?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I think Mildred and Phyllis, they were all part of the first phase. But then it was like 10 years later when the evangelicals showed up. And then you had 10 years later, the rescue movement. And then I would say you had 10 years later, Senator Santorum courageously showing the world what a partial birth abortion is. And then you had social media and technology. And I think so those are sort of the four major waves of success. But the rescue movement and a lot of establishment people in the pro-life movement, and especially like the RNC and others, said, oh, this isn't the way to do it. This isn't the way to go. But we cannot deny the rescue movement really caught America's attention. And when people think about abortion long enough, most of them become pro-life, right?
Absolutely. See, Jason, the rescue movement honestly was one of the most beautiful movements in history of men, women, children, grandmas, grandpas coming together from different denominations, different churches, and it didn't matter. And they would literally willingly put their bodies in between the killer and the victim. And we would lay down or sit down in front of those abortion mill doors. I've been beaten with billy clubs. I've been maced. I've been punched. I've been kicked. And it didn't matter. We would sit there peacefully, and take the beatings and buy time. And our counselors would talk to the women that were waiting to go in. And so often, more than not, when we bought that time, those women ended up changing their minds and keeping their babies. And so all of that was worth it. And people try to paint the rescue movement as this crazy, vigilante, violent thing. It was one of the most peaceful movements there ever was. I will admit there was one time, Jason, that I did hit somebody, but I watched him sexually assault a woman. And at that point, all bets are off and I knocked him out.
Now, was that picked up by the press? What happened?
Nope, that just got left, but I knocked his head. I will never.
When you say sexually assaulted, what was he doing? He was just abusing.
He grabbed her breast and started twisting it.
Was this?
This was at a rescue. She was sitting at the door next to me. This was a pro-abort trying to get us away from the door before the police came in. And he reached in, grabbed her breast, and twisted it, and I punched him in the head, and he went flying out.
Isn't it amazing?
And I have no regrets.
What these leftists think they can do to us. You know, they can. I once at a pro-life event saw a man kick a stroller that he thought a child was in. Just booted it.
Oh, my gosh.
And by God's grace, the woman standing behind the stroller was not the mother, it was the mother's friend. The mother had taken the child to go change the child's diaper on a bench. And this woman was talking to this guy. He was yelling at her. He got increasingly more frustrated and then punted the stroller, which had
what kind of reprobate do you have to be?
They call Clarence Thomas on Twitter the N-word. They're not canceled. And I've said this on previous shows. Rene Girard said, when you stand with the vulnerable, you become indistinguishable from the crowd, from the mob, to the vulnerable person they're attacking. And so when you stand next to a human being that has no legal protection, no legal rights, that they're not protected from violence, the mob actually sees us as if we also have no rights, no protection. And
absolutely.
And oftentimes the police, they walk away. The crimes against us are not prosecuted. Now we see the rise of terrorism, leftist terrorism like Antifa and Jane's Revenge and these other organizations. They're terrorist groups. And I can't wait till we take Congress and the White House back and we can really start going after these organizations as terrorist groups. The people they're attacking are not protected.
They're literally terrifying and causing literal terror in the Supreme Court justices' neighborhoods, and our White House will do nothing about it.
No, there was I talked about this, and I think in yesterday's show. The New York Times did an article, I don't know if you saw it, where they said it was the first 4 paragraphs were just horrified that pro-lifers said that they're willing to use violence to defend themselves from violence. That if they're attacked, they will defend themselves. And so the first 3-4 paragraphs of the article were all about the horrifying statements that people have made saying they will defend themselves from violence. And then at the very end, they did say, well, we have to acknowledge that there have been, these threats are real and da-da-da-da-da. So their horror isn't that innocent women and, the ladies that work at the pregnancy centers, they're all women for the most part.
Yeah.
A lot of them elderly and retired. And
the sweetest ladies.
Their lives are being threatened, and the media doesn't seem to care about it. The Department of Justice doesn't seem to care about it. The FBI doesn't see it. It's going to be very embarrassing when DOJ and FBI, when they look back at this previous decade, when America rights the ship, which we're in the process of writing, thanks to Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden is going to deliver us everything, but they're going to look back. They're going to look back in shame.
I look at, and thank God there's still a few places, still a few businesses that have some courage. Like I'm reading the story of how Morton's Steakhouse in D.C. protected Justice Kavanaugh when there was that violent mob outside ready to attack him, and they helped him get out the back door. And then the White House defends the people that were outside ready to attack Kavanaugh. It's absolutely sickening. But I could tell you, after reading that story, I'm definitely going to Morton's next time I'm in D.C.
That's why you're going to Morton's? Is that what you needed an excuse to go to Morton's for? Is that why?
I can't afford Morton's, to be honest. But
now if
hey, they defended Kavanaugh.
If White Castle's defended him, would you be as eager to go? How great of a story would that be? White Castle's had to let Kavanaugh out the back door because a violent mob was out front. Justice Kavanaugh was seen at a White Castle's on Saturday at 3 a.m.
If I went to White Castle, I'd be sick to my stomach. No offense. I just can't put that food in my body anymore.
It makes me sick to my stomach too, but whenever I'm in Chicago, I got to go.
See, that's In-N-Out Burger, double animal style. I get a stomach ache afterwards. It's the greatest thing.
You see what I said there? I said when I go to Chicago, I got to go to White Castle's. I got to go. And what's in the pun was not
Giordano's, not Gino's East.
Gino's East. Oh, you know Gino's East. No, I got to go to Gino's East. Giordano's not so much. Illuminati's Home Run In Pizza's the best.
No. Illuminati's is my least favorite.
Yeah, well, you have bad taste.
That's all right. Yeah, I hang out with you, obviously.
All right, let's go. Let's move. I want to move to Rock for Life.
Okay.
Because today I have to conserve my energy. I can't talk to you for 3 hours. Today I am going to my boys are going to do, it's 900 degrees out in Texas, and they want to go do airsoft. And my teenage boys were like, Dad, you want to come? They made me buy an airsoft gun. I'm like, no, you boys go. I'll drive you there.
Yeah.
I'll bring a book. I don't want to get in your way. And they're like, no, Dad, we wouldn't mind. I'm like, no, guys, you go. I really,
it didn't work, did it?
And they're like, no, Dad, I mean, we really want you to go. If you don't want to go, you don't have to, Dad, but we really want. What's wrong with kids today? Aren't they supposed to shun me at this point? But no, I got to go run around in a field.
If they know you don't want to do something, they're going to just torture you till you do it.
No, they really want me to go. It's just, I don't know what's wrong. Remember when we were kids, we all acted as if we didn't have parents, as if we all sort of lived on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, there are these adults that live in I had 2 roommates, Frank and
But yeah, you had your own space. It's like you're renting a room from a
would you have your mom, like, and your parents, let's say you're going to meet them at the mall, you see all your friends are meeting, you'd have them drop you off like a block from the mall.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But
you're 9. You're 9. Like, how do your friends think you got there? You're 9 years old. You're like, Ma, can you drop me off like 3 blocks from the mall?
See, growing up in LA, I had my RTD pass, my public, and it was like at 10, 11 years old, I could jump on the city bus and go anywhere. It was no big deal back then.
That's true.
But I had my bus pass, I went to the beach every day of the summer. That's where I lived my life, was Avenue C and the Esplanade in Redondo Beach.
And you think how long our summers were, because our summers were like days, endless, like the great movie, Endless Summer, that seemed endless because you had a telephone in the house. You weren't even allowed to use that. You couldn't even look at that. Don't even think about picking up that telephone. And
being in the house was torture.
Yeah, because
being
you had
in the house was torture.
You had 3 channels, and they had soap operas on, and then that was it. That was it.
And if you didn't have a clicker, your parents would make you get up and change the channel.
Well, we didn't have a clicker till I was probably in high school. You know,
but I wanted outside. I did not want to be in the house unless I was hungry. Unless I was hungry, I was out of the house.
You could drink from any hose in any house in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. You could play hide and seek and hide in anyone's side yard. Nobody cared.
You know what we did?
Nobody cared.
You could go to Dairy Queen, and they had fresh pickles for free out like at a little condiment bar. We would go get water and pickles for free. They'd give us water. Then we would take the pickles to Taco Bell. And Taco Bell, I don't know if you remember these days, where their hot sauce was the best, but you ladled it out. It wasn't in packets. You ladled out the Taco Bell hot sauce. You remember that?
And that's, because I used to get the Bell Beefer. The taco burger. Remember the Bell Beefer? It was like a sloppy
I don't think it made it to
taco
Chicago. I think that just...
Oh, it was a California thing, man. Yeah, the Bell Beefer, and you poured that sauce on there.
So we would pour it over the pickles, and we thought we were in heaven. We're eating. So you didn't need to go home because you had pickles with hot sauce. You had all the water you could drink. And then you might run home for a liver sausage with Miracle Whip on Wonder Bread, shove that in your face.
So, Jason, I hope this doesn't come off as weird, or I guess in today's day and age I could get canceled for this. But we always wanted to make friends with the Filipino kids. Because you go to a Filipino kid's house, their mother's going to shove food down your mouth every single time.
Well, I'm not seeing that I have Filipino kids. I give you permission to say this.
Oh, dude, because this is what it is. The Filipino mom wanted her house to be the hangout because she wanted to know where her kids were. So they would have the best toys. They would have the pool. That she'd be making lumpia every day. Like, that was where we would go to eat. We didn't even go home half the time because our friends, these 2 brothers, their mother would feed us like, oh, it was so crazy. And they had a pool and they had the best toys. And it was just the best place to go. And I look at that and I'm like, she was a genius because she always knew where her kids were.
Now, here's the thing. I have Filipino kids, right? I call myself a Filipino supremacist. Okay, I am a Filipino. I am the Malcolm X of the Filipino community. It's my favorite culture. But I had Filipino friends when I was very young. But I guess because you were in California, but in Chicago, I thought the one was Japanese and the other was Mexican. Till much later. Till Facebook. I'm not kidding. I had a friend, Howie. I thought Howie was Mexican. Then my other friend, and the reason I think in my mind, and she listens to this podcast, I know she does, Maria, so in 3rd grade, I had a kimono. I don't know why I had a kimono, but we were doing a play, and the teacher asked if anyone had a kimono. I'm like, I do, because my step-grandpa went to Japan and brought me back a kimono. So
my grandpa brought me a pachinko machine.
There you go. So I'd rather the pachinko machine than, and I mean, this was a very, effeminate kimono. I look like but I had it. So she wore it in the school play and ended up on the local paper in the kimono. And my dad was like, what is your kimono doing on this young woman, a young girl? Well, I think because she wore the kimono in the play, I just always assumed she was Japanese. And,
oh my God.
And so, but we've been friends since 2nd grade. No, she was Filipino. By the way, we're getting canceled right now. We are canceled. So my 2 Filipino friends.
I half Mexican family, so I can say that.
Right?
No, but dude, I'm telling you, this mother, it started with breakfast. My parents noticed I wasn't eating breakfast at the house, and they're like, why don't you eat breakfast anymore? I'm like, we go to Johnny's house, and his mom made lumpia every morning, fresh lumpia every morning. And like 8 to 10 of us would come over for breakfast every day and then walk to the bus.
Did you get the spicy banana ketchup?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about that until I was 17. Spicy banana ketchup. Why isn't that in every, like, why doesn't Heinz make Filipino spicy banana ketchup?
I don't know. Normally I hate ketchup, but see, I live in the Midwest now, Jason, in Ohio, and what they call spicy is what we call mild in California. So it's kind of
well, the Filipino ketchup's not that spicy, but it's got a little spice and it's got the banana and it's ketchup, and it's the best on eggs in the morning.
Oh, see, that's
with
an
rice
salsa,
and
brother.
Portuguese sauce. No, scrambled eggs.
I do scrambled eggs with salsa and crumbled queso fresco.
Well, that's okay. I mean, you're from California, but I lived 31 years in Hawaii, so that's where you know. So where? How did we end up talking about Filipino food? Well, how do we got to bring this? Rock for Life.
So let's go back to Rock for Life. So here we are, Jason. I after that day at the abortion mill, when I was crying out to God, asking him, like, I saw that girl and I heard an audible voice, Jason, an audible voice say, "Bryan, save my children." And I knew from that moment on, this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And that's when I sort of had this vision.
Now, the atheist Bryan Kemper listening to this, what would he say? When hearing you say that?
He would just be laughing. He would just take another hit of the joint and start laughing. But
yeah, right. So we know people, when we share our internal locutions out loud, it's kind of fun. It's kind of strange. It's weird, right? But you had an internal locution, and
absolutely,
and you followed it.
And that's what.
But think if you were an atheist and they heard someone say, "The universe said, save my dolphins," they would go, "Whoa, bro."
I'd wonder what they were smoking.
They would no. But I'm saying, if I'm some lefty, reads the Celestine Prophecy, Course in Miracles, 4 Agreements are on my shelf right there. You know who you are. Okay. And then you heard someone say, and then I heard the universe tell me, save the oceans. You'd go, whoa, man, you heard the universe to talk to you.
Yeah.
But then when you say, I heard God say, save a human being, save the most vulnerable member of the human family, that guy is weird. Think of this. The Romans thought the Christians were weird because they saved Jews. Christians and Jews would rescue, as you know this, rescue infants off of exposure walls because the Romans didn't want to be culpable. They didn't want to be responsible to the gods for killing children. So they would just put them on walls and say, well, God has used wild animals to save people in the past, like Romulus and Remus and others. He can use animal. If it's on God. Like, we didn't kill them, we just left them on the wall.
Yeah.
And the Christians would come and rescue the babies, and the Romans would say, oh, what kind of freak would rescue and raise another person's child? Like, how weird is that? But they never asked themselves, what kind of freak would put their own child on a wall to be devoured by wild animals? If they heard somebody say, and okay, leftist, Alan Guttmacher, intern, I'm talking to you now. I feel like that woman from Romper Room. I see Freddie, and I see Keith at.
Oh my God!
I see Keith. I see you over there, in DuPont Circle in your Alan Guttmacher Institute office, listening to the podcast. I see you, and my question is, what would you say if you heard someone say they heard the universe tell them, give women abortions? They'd go, whoa, that's something. But you heard God in internal locution say, save my babies. And you thought the best way to do that is through disordered music.
Well, dude, I'm telling you, there's a certain quote about discord in a certain movie I've seen. What do you think that might be, Jason?
The Godfather 2.
Come on.
Crescendo. By the way, I wrote
that exact line.
So I wrote all that. By the way, I didn't get credit for that. But I did come in and say, we need to put this line in here about discord. It comes from C.S. Lewis. It's in our movie Crescendo. And it's a narrative short film on the life of Beethoven, who popularized the use of discord. And it was considered horrifying and frightening to people, a discordant note. But C.S. Lewis said that when man fell, discord entered creation. And God had one of two choices: destroy mankind or create a new melody. Oh.
Absolutely.
That's
So
C.S.
here
Lewis.
I am.
So we plagiarized C.S. Lewis and Fulton Sheen in our little beautiful film Crescendo. I'll put it in the show notes. I believe, and I'm a producer, I can say this, I'm not the director, it's the most beautiful short film ever made. And we made it to be the
I
most
weep
beautiful
every time I watch it. I literally cannot watch that movie without crying every time. I cannot. That is one of the most powerful movies that's ever been created. And it makes me cry, and anyone I show it to is the same thing. And
but I'm not supposed to say it myself, right? I mean, Taika Waititi wouldn't. If I was interviewing Taika Waititi, he wouldn't say Jojo Rabbit, the wittiest movie ever made. It is,
yeah,
but he wouldn't say it. He knows it too. I know it. He knows.
I fell in love with punk rock music. I fell in love with hard rock music. I loved hardcore. I loved all of that music. To me, that music is true melody. That's the talent that goes in. And if you ever listen to Metallica's S&M album where they play with the San Francisco Philharmonic, it changes what metal is when you see it and hear it played with a full Philharmonic orchestra. So for me, that was beauty, and I thought, I want to take that and bring the pro-life message to the world. And so I contacted some bands, and our first show was in Aliso Viejo, California in 1994. About 600 kids showed up. MTV did a story. I actually interviewed with Kurt Loder, the original MTV news guy.
By the way, I think he's pro-life now.
I didn't know that.
That'd
be great.
Yeah, I may just be making that up, but
sure. I interviewed with him, and we did this show, and the singer of that band, The Crucified, brought a girl to the show. They weren't playing that show, but he brought a girl to the show that had an appointment for an abortion, and she ended up keeping her baby after that first show. And what we did, Jason, you have to hear how we did this. We didn't have video capabilities or any of that kind of stuff, but I knew the video, The Hard Truth. So what I did is I stripped the music, that song, A Malediction by Kemper Crab, had that played through the loudspeakers, and I had the singer of one band, the guitar player of another band, the drummer of another band, all standing in line across the stage with a sign. And one by one, they would turn their sign over. And one of it was a live baby in the womb. The next one was a dead baby that had been aborted. And then all this interacted all the way across. At the end of that song, I gave the talk. And it was so powerful. God used that moment. And this was the first time most of these kids had ever seen what an abortion looked like, or even a baby in the womb looked like. And it went from there. We did 2 more shows, and that's when I got the call from Lollapalooza when they were a tour, and asked me to take our booth out on tour in 1994 with Green Day and George Clinton and the Beastie Boys and Smashing Pumpkins. And we toured this country doing a pro-life booth at every Lollapalooza stop. And that was really the birth of what Rock for Life was. From there on to Bill Maher, and the rest is history.
And, for people who need to understand, that's like landing at Normandy. Or no, that's like the Doolittle raid. That's the founding of Rock for Life in the early 90s is like the Doolittle raid. It's like you were basically bombing Tokyo and then crash landing in China. This was a deep penetration into the culture where we were not permitted. So how I tell young people today, I mean, it's gone back and forth. I think about 10 years ago, to be pro-life on college campuses was that it's easiest. And then with the influx of gender ideology, it kind of washed away a lot of the successes we made with youth culture, strangely enough. And now that ball is bouncing back as young women are like, whoa, wait, what? How did we become the losers in all of this? So now it's swinging back. But
absolutely.
But in the early 90s, to say you were pro-life was because a lot of us, it was pre-Google, pre-smartphones.
Well, that's the thing.
No one was thinking about abortion. They just had a slogan or two.
We didn't know there was people around the country that thought the same until I went to the March for Life and started meeting people in 1994. I mean, I think I had my first email address at that point, but to do a show, I had to research and call concert hotlines in different places, and I'd have to go to Kinko's and create flyers and then stand outside other events every day for 6 months to get one show promoted. Like, it was a lot of hard work at that point. And then going around at Lollapalooza, starting to meet people going, oh, I agree with you. Oh, wow, we didn't know there were other, people into rock and stuff that are pro-life. And we started seeing this, and that's when we started with our first website, and we started to learn this. And it was an incredible journey to be able to do that and to travel the country, basically creating this new underground hardcore pro-life scene. And by the end of the 90s, Jason, when you came in and met me and Rock for Life towards the early 2000s, you could not go to a Christian music festival without seeing about 500 kids wearing a pro-life T-shirt. Abortion is mean. Abortion is homicide. It went from we were the only ones. Nobody had T-shirts because they all were cheesy as crap. And then next thing you know, by the end of the 90s, there was an explosion of young people that were willing to stand up against abortion.
Well, and you've heard me say this about you for 2 decades. We all need to do what Bryan Kemper has done. I would say this over 2 decades. Make your tribe pro-life. Don't worry about the world. Worry about your tribe. I was a jock, right? So my pro-life student union was dominated by like athletes on campus, which didn't seem to be a bad strategy, because then what happened, and we weren't Christians or conservatives. A lot of them weren't conservatives. They would be my friends who I would get to be pro-life. And I learned that from you. I said, Bryan Kemper had made his tribe pro-life. You'd go to a Christian rock festival. You'd go to a rock festival like Lollapalooza, and you would see pro-life shirts everywhere. That's the other thing you've done a great job with, is making these pro-life shirts that people actually want to wear, not just with the art and the messaging, but also you knew that it's very important that the cut, that the fit be something, we're just not going to put a slogan on a
I was
boxy,
tired of
ugly shirt. You said, let's make a stylish cut. You were the first one to do really beautiful cuts for women. And I am a biologist, and I can tell. So you did that. And I remember when I eventually was asked, and you personally, we won't go into it maybe, but to take over Rock for Life. And I said to you, man, bro, I don't like rock music. I like reggae and Hawaiian music, and I like ska and punk. But like the straight edge thing and that, I'm like, what is this? This is weird. And you're like, don't worry about it. I really want you to be at the helm of Rock for Life. And but I would go to these concerts and I would say, whoa, like they would be pro-life events organically. It's just that whole tribe, that straight edge. What would we call that? That tribe, your tribe became a loud pro-life voice. You'd go to the March for Life, and there'd be these kids with punk rock, and this was not AstroTurf, this was not cosplay. These kids, a lot of them were from broken homes. I remember one young woman that worked for you or volunteered for you. Her and her friends, they were like hippies that only wore clothes that they were weird, man. They would like dumpster dive.
They were like the ones, they go and ride trains and do all of that. There were several of those.
Yeah, but they were
solidly
girls.
Pro-life.
Solidly pro-life. They'd smell like marijuana and patchouli. They smell like marijuana and patchouli oil. They would be like, oh, we're going dumpster diving for food. And you're like, who, what? And I remember once some of the guys that were with them, I'm like, do you guys want to stay in my room? But you got to shower first, and you'd have these punk rock kids from broken homes, but they were pro-life. You made your tribe pro-life. You made deep fissures into youth culture where you allowed them to express their natural sentiment, right? I mean, is this conversion that was going on at these festivals, or just illumination, or people finding out they weren't alone?
This was all of that. There was people finding out they weren't alone, and then we'd have the kid come up and start to. I'll tell you, Jason, it's happened so many times where they'd come up and they'd argue and they'd argue and they'd argue, and by the end of the festival, they're hanging out, passing out literature with you. Some of the greatest moments, one of my favorite moments of all time. This girl came up and she was so angry, and we were at Soul Fest up in New Hampshire, and she was so angry, and she was just telling, and she had left, I'm going to have an abortion, and blah, blah, blah. And then 3 years later, this girl walks up to my booth, and she's like, I don't know if you remember me. And she explained that that's who she was. And then her boyfriend walked up with that little baby, with that little kid, like 2 years old. And she said, Bryan, you saved my child's life. And I got to hold this precious little child. And it was like right there, that moment, everything I've been through is worth it just for that moment. But that moment happens so many different times in different places.
Bryan, that's the best part. I get it. Somebody posted on my podcast the last review. I don't know who it is. They said that if you read it, it sounds like they're saying that they know me, and then 20 years ago they chose life because of me, and they have a daughter that's 20 years old because of me. And they listen to my podcast. I was at Students for Life recording yesterday for Kristen Hawkins, and one of the young staffers came up to me and said, "I heard you speak in 2016. You're why I'm in the pro-life movement." Do you think that someone goes to Planned Parenthood 20 years later and says, "Hey, I just want to thank you. Because of you, I didn't have to pay child support for the past 20 years. Planned Parenthood, you saved me from 20 years of child support, and now I am vice president of Kenny Shoes." I don't know if there's Kenny Shoes is still a thing. But
I don't know.
I don't think Zips. The Zips. Those are my first. Those were they really messed up, right? Because those shoes, at least in my memory, were as cool as Nike. They were like really great shoes. You
thought you could jump high, run faster. You thought you could do everything. Because we used to go to Stride Right and get our Zips all the time.
Zips, you'd get your new shoes. You'd challenge everyone to a race.
Oh, absolutely.
You thought it was like anabolic steroids. You thought you had a performance-enhancing drug. You're like, come on, I'll beat anyone.
No, nobody's going to go and thank Planned Parenthood for that, but people come up all the time and thank me for, like you said, I've had people come up and say, "I heard you speak." I had this young nun came up to me, and actually she converted to Christianity, became a Catholic, and became a nun because of hearing me speak. Like that, and she's like, "I have dedicated my whole ministry to making sure I pray for you every day." Like that was one of the most humbling moments of my life to hear that. This young nun who's dedicated her life to praying for me and the work we're doing.
And that doctor, think of all the work that you've done, and it goes back to that emergency room doctor. It goes back to that fireman, the band Crucible. You said Crucifix?
The Crucified. And they're good friends. They're still good friends of mine. I've had the drummer on my podcast, and they're an amazing group of people.
Hey, I want to talk about. I want to tell the story about how we met. Do you want to tell the story? You want me to tell the story?
Okay, well, I know that you were hanging out with some bougie girl. We know that you were bougie.
I was not bougie at all. You what?
She was bougie. I met her that night. She was bougie.
Yeah, I was. But, do you know where I was headed? I was not supposed to be going there.
You were headed to a presidential ball.
Yes.
And you found out that there was this other event called Rock for Life going on.
Well, I knew who you were. I was like, Rock for Life's having a concert. This is the best. I get to meet Bryan Kemper. And it was like Bryan Kemper and Eric Whittington are going to be there. Yeah.
Oh, well, of course. And you come up with this girl. Was she wearing a fur coat?
Yeah, she was. I don't even want to say. She was from a very famous family. And
posh. Let's just say she was posh.
Wearing this fur coat, thinking she's going to the Black Tie and Boots ball. But I was like, hey, let's not go to that. Let's go to this straight edge concert in Crystal City.
Crystal City Marriott. That's where we had it.
Yeah.
And you came. Reverend Mahoney was there. I was there. Eric Whittington. One of my very first interns, Brandy Swindell, who now runs Stanton Healthcare. An amazing.
Oh, yeah, I got to have her
medical.
On. Text me her number. Yeah. I don't have her number. So I want to have Brandy.
Absolutely. So, and here you show up. Instead of going to the presidential ball, you come to see a bunch of hardcore bands,
like in a tuxedo. Tuxedo, and then.
But yeah,
and I was nervous. I was like so nervous. My palms are sweaty. I'm like, I'm about to meet my heroes, and
to eat mom's spaghetti.
Yeah, I was just so nervous. I'm going to meet Bryan Kemper and Eric Whittington, and then. But I think at first Tina was there, and I was I met Tina, and then you guys came up, and I was remember like. It wasn't my kind of music, let's just say that. I probably should have gone to the Black Tie and Boots ball.
No, you were where you were supposed to be, man.
I know, I'm kidding. But it was great. I was so excited to meet you, and we've been friends ever since. And that's something about the pro-life movement. I tell people, all of my heroes have become my friends. And a lot of my heroes entered the pro-life movement long after me. They're young. But you become friends with whenever I go to like the March for Life, I feel like I'm going to the annual induction to the Hall of Fame, and I get to meet these people that I greatly admire. Who in the pro-life movement is someone that you've greatly admired, that's informed you or inspired you?
Dude, oh, wow. So many. Mildred Jefferson. Mildred Jefferson came
Tell
to
everyone
see
about
me
her.
speak.
Tell everyone about her.
So she founded Right to Life. Like, she was one of the...
Was she a middle-aged white man?
No, she was a young black woman who was the first female black doctor to ever graduate from Harvard. You know, nothing big.
We're not allowed to talk about her, I think. If I want to share this on social media, we can't. We got pick someone else.
But she came to see me speak one time when I spoke at Harvard Law, and that was like one of my biggest honors. Judy Brown. Phyllis Schlafly.
Okay, tell us about Judy Brown. So Judy Brown founded American Life League. But what was she doing when Roe versus Wade happened? What was happening in America? What was she doing?
Well, I know that she was working at Kmart.
Like a secretary.
She was working at Kmart.
She was a secretary at Kmart, right?
Yeah, well, I think she was high up at Kmart.
Okay.
Paul, her husband, actually invented the blue light special.
Well, both of you and I worked for Paul, and that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
The blue light isn't hearing his voice. Can you do his voice?
Oh, yeah. Brian, come to the big office.
The blue light is now flashing on Kenny's shoes, on Zips.
But, so Judy Brown was, and the talk that I've been giving and I've been doing lately, Jason, is called "How to Respond to Your Teenager If They Tell You they're pregnant." And what I first learned, the best response and how to respond, was from Judy Brown, who taught me that the first words out of your mouth are "I love you." You don't sit there and scream at them for having sex. You don't. You tell them you love them and you welcome that child into the world, because pregnancy is not a sin. That is
someone who lost his first child to a forced abortion when I was a teenager. That's very powerful. And I remember her telling me that too. She also taught me to never say unborn, say preborn.
Yep. And that's something I prefer, preborn. Absolutely. But she taught me so much. And Jason, when Rock for Life first started and the internet was going, before people really knew how to get domain names, I was on GeoCities, and that's where we had the first Rock for Life website. And I had a roommate that had this, I think, a 286, if that, maybe a 386 like computer. It was just back in the day, it was not too fast, but he would let us for about an hour a day use his computer to do stuff for Rock for Life, because we were one of the first ones that had any presence on the internet. And when I told Judy Brown that, she mailed me a brand new computer. And that's when we first registered rockforlife.org and started. And we were one of the first that had a full website up on there for pro-life, reaching out to people. And Judy was always there for me. She believed when people would say something about my haircut or anything, Judy always defended me. Joe Scheidler, Jeff White. Jeff White was my mentor. He's the one who took me into his home and made sure that Rock for Life was able to start. Jeff White is probably one of the most important men in my life as far as what he did for me in my work. Father Frank Pavone, who I now work for. There's just so many of them. Phyllis Schlafly, learning, because people try to go ballistic on Phyllis Schlafly for standing up against the ERA, but what she did saved women for many, many, many years. And she's a hero. There's so many.
My daughter, her favorite person on earth is Phyllis Schlafly, and I see so many young women. There's like this cult following that exists around Phyllis, who was a friend of ours. And I was excited that in 2015, I won the Paul Weyrich. I was runner-up behind Megyn Kelly, who won that year. Megyn Kelly. But I think Megyn Kelly won. It was the Paul Weyrich Award for Media, and it was presented to me by Phyllis Schlafly. And but you see these young women just adore her, and I think it's the rise of gender ideology as a weapon against women, or if I want to, biological women. This gender gender ideology is a war against birthing people, whatever it is.
Don't say the term. Dude, how? Thank God. And it's funny because as leftist as Bette Midler is, she still got attacked for saying, stop, enough's enough.
Yeah, it's so stupid. It's just, we got to get through this. So I got to do a whole shows on this. It drives me up a wall. Do you know what? This is what I obsess on, Brian. When this is too much, but what I obsess on when I'm thinking about the movies that I'm outlining that I'm going to make. Now, when we were kids, there were movies for teenagers like 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club.
John Hughes movies.
All the John Hughes movies. Now, obviously, there's a lot of hair in the soup. Maybe there's only some soup in a big hairball. So there's a lot wrong with these movies, right? And I'm not saying that, but when we were young, there was this idea of the awakening of Eros in young people in a way that we just don't see today because of pornography and Tinder and all of this. And the obliteration of gender. And the first person to really understand this died of HIV/AIDS. Alan Bloom, who wrote The Closing of the American Mind, and he was just a romantic. And although he lived a very dissolute life, to put it mildly, and he was a philosopher, and he loved Plato's Symposium. He loved Eros. But what I don't think he understood is he didn't understand. I think that we understand is that love, as we appreciate it, even Eros, is infused with Christian charity and a recognition of sex as the marital act. And that created all this tension, and around this tension became all this beautiful art, everything from Shakespeare sonnets to Air Supply. Okay. Now people are going, this guy's lost me here. Air Supply and Shakespeare in the same sentence, but follow me here. Young people don't even have this sort of pain and angst. And do you see that? I mean, you've been a youth managing young people for a very long time. Do you see the death of Eros in young people because of pornography and promiscuity?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because you said Shakespeare sonnets, and I was thinking, I forget the number. It was where it's, love is not love when it alters, when alteration finds, or bends with the remover. And that's something that we've lost today. People don't understand.
Oh, say that again. I'm slow. Say that again. So this is from one of Shakespeare.
Love is
what
not,
sonnet is this?
I believe it's 127. I can't remember the name.
Just say it with confidence. We're not going to check you.
Love is not love when it alters, when alteration finds or bends with the remover. We're talking about how unconditional love, that you love someone through every pain, through every hurt, through all of that. That was such a beautiful statement, and it's the basis of the movie Sense and Sensibility. If you watch that sonnet's talked about in that movie, and that whole plot is about that, how we should love each other, that it's through every little aspect of things, because that's how God loves us. And so when you mentioned that, and you mentioned Shakespeare's sonnet, that just came to my head. You need to. I'll find out.
Everyone needs to read my favorite. My favorite sonnet is the one that begins, "The more I blink, the better I see." Now, the sonnets are very pro-life.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only anti-abortion, but anti even this mentality of being closed off to life. They're very pro-life. Did you catch that reading the sonnets?
I have never really looked at it that way, but it's going to be
start from the beginning. When 40 years
yes,
besiege thy brow. I'm going to butcher it right now. There's an English teacher listening going, oh gosh, here we go. But there's one that's when 40 years besiege thy brow. And I ask, where is thy beauty? And it was sunken and all eaten, sunken in something like a selfish grave. Okay. I'm not an English, but I haven't read it in many years, but it's this idea that you were just selfish and that you didn't create life and that your beauty's missing. But if you created life, you could point to your child and say, where's my beauty? My beauty's there. Look, this is where my beauty's gone. But if you don't have life and you say, where's your beauty? All you see is wrinkles, a wrinkled old face. So, but yeah, this idea of Eros has been lost. And I think that me and you, we had the privilege of watching with the rise of the new technologies. Young people have been ambushed. And so when you first started Rock for Life, children, their pornography was the Sears catalog. And then all of a sudden it was iPhone in every kid's pocket. And now I just read a study, and I bring this up a lot because it just shocks me that kids have a type of porn addiction before they're even through puberty, just that's initiated through curiosity. And I can't imagine how dementing that is to the development of a young person. And this should be a national emergency, but instead we're thrusting children in front of, trans dancers.
And here now you have these like I think I just read this week a couple of adult celebrities whose daughters are getting famous on OnlyFans, and now I think Denise Richards started her own one because her daughter did, and seeing that to where this whole generation of women feel like that's the only way they can succeed or make money in life, and it breaks my heart to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very sorrowful, and I it's just we want young people today are being walled off from a natural, normal human experiences that all humans have had from Adam and Eve until our generation. And I believe, well, we're seeing it now. I want to talk to you about this. Maybe this is a digression, but it's something I obsess on. As what I call classical liberal, my mission is to conserve liberalism, to conserve the Anglo-American political order that rests on a Christian understanding of the human person. And Zmarek and I are sketching out one of our next books. It's called Conserving Liberalism. And that's horrifying Catholic integralists right now who want to only accept one definition of liberalism. But when we say in the English-speaking world conserving liberalism, it's a political order rested on the inviolable dignity of the human person, going back to the Magna Carta, the English Bill of Rights, our Bill of Rights, our Declaration Principle. I think this is something that's worth conserving. But I fear a sort of swing to the almost swing towards fascism. You see this with, I almost call them ISIS, with Antifa. They're really fascists branded left, right? So whatever you want to call it. Antifa is a type of illiberalism that's brutal and totalitarian, that leaves no space for natural human emotion and thinking. It's just, they're controlled by ideology. I think that we'll see kind of rightist emanations of this erupting because of pornography and the death of Eros. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the fascism, I mean, to be honest, it's amazing that the left that calls pro-lifers fascists have become the most fascist on things. Like, I was talking to a teenager about gender beliefs and such, and said, well, okay, I told this teenager, I said, I have no problem, fine. If someone wants to tell me their name is Larry, I'll call them Larry, but I'm not going to believe. And I was told, oh, you have to. Then you're just anti, you're just blah, 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 because you won't believe it. And I'm like, you telling me what I have to believe is the most fascist thing you can do. And it gets them, their blood boiling, because they want to say everyone else is the fascist.
They're gender fascists. They're gender fascists the way the Nazis were race fascists. And guess what race and gender have in common? What race and gender have in common is expressed by racist fascists and gender fascists is that they don't exist. That the Nazi idea of race was a myth. It was not a true myth. It was untrue. And absolutely, the gender idea, and to think that there were people had PhDs in racial science at the best universities in the world. People like Heidegger signed on with Hitler, who was considered the new Socrates. Think about that. This is something, I don't know if anyone's ever said this before. I might have to write this for the stream. They're gender fascists. They're grounded in something that is fundamentally not true, that divides us in ways that are bizarre, the same way the Nazis were grounded in something that was fundamentally not true, and it was bizarre.
And the thing was, Jason, I told this person, I said, fine, I'll call you a he. I'll call you Larry. I don't care, but I'm not going to believe.
Because you're kind, and you don't want to hurt somebody. You don't want them to feel
but
alienated.
If I don't believe what they believe, then I'm phobic and hate. Since when has disagreement become phobic?
By the way, one of you and our best friends is trans.
Oh, absolutely.
You know who I'm talking about, who used to work for us. We'll just leave it at that. We love him. Am I allowed to call him him? We love him.
I don't care. I love human beings. I don't care what your name is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I have to believe that that gender is a spectrum. I don't have to believe that. I don't have to believe that gender is separate from sex, because I don't believe that. So, but if I respect you and I love you and I treat you like a human, like I treat everyone else, it's not enough anymore. It's not enough. I must actually believe what they believe, or I'm a fascist, or I'm this or that. And that is the most fascist thing you can be, is to force you to believe that.
Right. Not only do you have to believe what they believe, You have to believe what they believe today, believe what they believe tomorrow, rejecting what they told you had to believe today. And then in a year, you're going to believe what we believe then. All that matters is you fly in the flock. Don't leave the flock's going to fly all over the place. The gods of the city are tyrants, and their catechism is forever changing. And I pity those of you who order yourself to the spirit of the age, because the spirit of the age is not grounded. It's dizzying. How about we order ourselves to a knowable, transcendent truth that's fixed? And in our relationships with other human beings, that we have an inviolable dignity because we were willed and created in the image of our Creator.
Absolutely.
With an inviolable dignity and beauty and worth. Let's ground that. You know, when I was an atheist pro-lifer and I was struggling to find an anthropology to support the vision of the human person that I saw as self-evident, but only really explained by Christianity. Like, I didn't want to be a Christian. Like, I looked everywhere. And at the end, it was Sartre and Freud and Nietzsche that pushed me toward Christianity because of their honesty. So they, Sartre, I think in Existentialism and Education, says that human dignity is Christian myth. This idea of human rights. So I was like, huh. And then it was reading Nietzsche and Civilization and Its Discontents by Freud and other writings by Freud that just made it clear to me that I either had to reject the vision of the human person. I was always obsessed. I don't know about you, Bryan. I was always obsessed with people. Like, as a kid, I would go and there was this little hot dog place that I would go sit at. And I would sit there. This is going to sound creepy. And I would get a hot dog with sesame seeds, poppy seeds, the little black ones. What are those?
Yeah.
Poppy seeds?
Sesame seeds.
Sesame seeds.
Sesame seeds.
No, sesame seeds are little white seeds, right?
Well, they're also black.
Okay, well, you know when the hot dogs in Chicago, they have the little black seeds on it, whatever those are.
Yeah.
I'm sounding really stupid right now. So I would eat my hot dog with my poppy seeds, sesame seeds, whatever seeds, and I would sit there drinking my RC Cola and watch people, and I would eat as slow as I could because it was a great place to sit and just look at human beings.
People watch.
Yeah, like, what is better than looking at human beings? What is cooler than a human being in the universe? Nothing. You can do an eclipse, a solar eclipse, a black hole. What? Nothing. Nothing, right? Like, nothing is cooler. A unicorn? Nothing. And I had to either say that what to me is self-evident is a kid that was raised with no religion, just looking at people, that they're the most special thing you could ever hope to find in the universe. Either I have to assent to the Christian revealed religious truth, or I have to acknowledge that everything is meaningless and human beings are nothing. That's the real choice, right? There's no middle ground there.
Well, it's funny, 'cause maybe I don't know if I'm stretching this. When Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate for the masses, maybe if he would have looked to see that the world was so bad that they needed some kind of opiate.
No, he did. No. That's how he meant it, by the way. So you know.
Exactly.
Marx, when he said that religion is the opiate of the masses, he was not condemning religion. He obviously was an atheist.
Yeah.
But he said that.
But he knew that it was needed. He knew that there was such a vacuum. And
Cornel West and there are other Marxists. I believe Cornel West kind of holds to that same idea. It's very respectful of religion.
You know what I say now, Jason?
What's that?
Abortion is the opiate of the left. Abortion is the opiate of the left, dude. That they need that to hold on to. It's like it all goes to one thing: the right to do whatever they want sexually to please. That's what all of this goes to. Is they want that right to be as crazy sexually as they can, to do the most, and they need it because they haven't experienced the true love that we just talked about earlier. They haven't experienced that true love that's pure, that fulfills you. And abortion is their opiate. They have to have that so they can continue on down that path that is just going to be more bitter and more sour and more deadly the farther they go away from the truth. and away from true love. And that's why I say abortion is the opiate of the left.
Yeah, I don't know. You might be right, but here's the thing. I have a lot of leftist friends that are pro-abortion. They're not like my best friends, but they're people that I work with in other capacities or befriended through different ways, different aspects of my life. My one friend works, I don't want to say too much, works in the Biden administration. She is in her 30s, probably never known her to have a boyfriend, never known her to date or express interest in men or women in any other way. Beautiful young woman.
She's career driven.
She's very dutiful in her career. She is one of the most wonderful people I've ever met. I mean, would guess maybe kind of asexual, just living her life. Likes, I don't want to, she has her hobbies. They're very simple and beautiful. She is a wonderful person, very thoughtful and kind and loving. She is the most rabid person I know in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, losing her mind. And for the life of me, I'm trying to understand, there are a lot of folks on the left that are like that, right? They're not living wild, dissolute lifestyles.
Yeah.
They are, maybe I think I've boiled it down to this. She's just very pious in the sense that she is very attuned to the edicts.
What is her reason? Has she told you why it affects her that much?
She won't even talk to me about it. No, I just see it on social media. No.
And Jason, a lot of times, and you never know, a lot of times it's usually that abortion was something that affected someone's life in some way, someone close to her, that she locks onto that. And I've seen that with
I bet that's
so
it.
many people.
I bet that's it.
But the thing is and I see what I'm talking about. What I see, especially being on the streets and being in front of the Supreme Court, is that rabidness of I want to be able to do whatever I want. I want to be as queer as possible. I want to be as all of this stuff. And you look at our culture. It is such a hookup culture. That's all it is anymore. People. Just who cares?
I don't even think they hook up, man. I wouldn't even give what they do. I wouldn't even call it a one-night stand. You know what it is?
Abortion ensures that lifestyle.
Yeah, it's pretty. You know what it is?
Abortion ensures.
When we were kids, we hooked up. We had one-night stands. That's what people did. Father Matthew Haberger was the first I heard to say this. He goes, I think they hear all these confessions. He's like, all they are doing is masturbating together. That's what he said. They're not even having sex. These people are just basically masturbating in the company of with someone else. And I think it's just kind of that pathetic. Yeah, but I think you hit the nail on the head. She's a very empathetic, loving person, and she probably has friends who've had abortions, and she sees us as those of us who are pro-life condemning her friends. And those friends were probably in some pickles, some tough situations. They see us as lacking thoughtfulness and empathy. And so that's probably what drives her.
And Jason, I'm not going to be the pro-lifer who pretends that every single sidewalk counselor is the nicest. I've seen people at the abortion mill that are mean. I've seen anti-abortion activists that don't know how to reach out to people, that don't know how to love people, and who sometimes do more damage at the abortion mill.
Brother, there's a maladjusted contingent. Thank God for 40 Days for Life. Because there is, and all social movements, by the way, right?
Yeah.
And all social movements, they attract some weirdos, like the pro-life movement attracted us. But
that's what we need to drown them out.
And there are girls who are raped by their fathers when they're 14 or their stepfathers, and their abortion story is different than my abortion story, right? Where there's a father forcing an abortion. And imagine, I always ask myself, and you've met my high school girlfriend. I believe you've met her, correct?
Yes.
So, I always tell her, it's not that your father forced you to have an abortion that sent me on this 40-year journey. It was how you told me. In retrospect, it took me like 30 years to realize, 25 years to realize. I used to think, I'm not kidding you, I'd say, God, how come I, of all the men who are responsible for abortions, manned up and ordered his life for the past, at the time, 25 years to fight for
Yeah.
life. How come I'm so much, I would think that's in the privacy of my own brain, better than these other men? What's wrong with these other men? And then one day, actually studying script writing and studying what a call to adventure is and how to draw out an inciting incident, it dawned on me. It wasn't that my high school girlfriend called me and told me she had a forced abortion or had an abortion. It's that she called me crying, unable to breathe, unable to mouth the words, that her father grabbed the phone and said it to me. It was how she told me. So imagine, Bryan, if when I was 17 and in basic training, my high school girlfriend called me and said that I need to confess to you, my father raped me. And that's how I got pregnant. I figured it out, and I want to get an abortion. And I really didn't even know what abortion was, but she explained it to me. And I want your support on this. My story would be that my high school girlfriend was saved from having to carry her adoptive father rapist. By the way, this didn't happen, but I'm just saying, I would probably be getting in your face at abortion clinics, right? So our inciting incidents can really push us in different directions. But we think we're
Absolutely.
right. Like we know we're right, but they know they're right. That's just But the thing is, we acknowledge their empathy. They have, I think why they're losing the culture is, do you think it's their inability to recognize that those of us who are pro-life are coming from someplace other than misogyny, patriarchy, da-da-da, that they really cannot ever listen to our stories? Is why they're losing?
A few years ago, right before the pandemic, the last March for Life, before all the COVID garbage, I was at the Silent No More rally at the end of the March for Life, when those men and women were giving up and giving their testimonies about what abortion did to them. And there was a group of, I think the clinic or Abortion Access Front, of about 4 or 5 women that were trying to attack the stage, grab the microphone, trying to stop this from happening. And my friend Scott and I, we stood at the front of the stage and put our bodies between them, and they were grabbing us. They were doing all this stuff, but we looked, and as the women were giving their testimonies, one of the pro-aborts actually stopped and started listening, and you can tell that it affected her. The rest of them kind of grabbed her, and then they all left at that point. But just the fact that these men and women who had been involved in abortion were giving their story to say why they regret it, why it's hurt them, how it's hurt them. The other side could not handle that. They did not want those stories to go out. They did not want anyone to hear anything negative about abortion in any way whatsoever, because they know how negative it actually is. And they know how damaging it actually is.
Even my pro-choice friends, quote unquote pro-choice, I should say, even my friends who, I have friends who are very few friends left, that they all become pro-life, but I have a few holdouts, and they will even admit that their abortion was a devastating experience in their life. So again, to you, Alan Guttmacher, intern, taking notes, listen, the first thing you need to do if you hope to have any success is tell the truth. And the truth is that abortion is a traumatic. That's why the slogan "safe, legal, and rare" that the abortion industry, the Democrat Party used to mouth, was at least bowing to the truth that having an abortion is an unpleasant and horrifying experience. Imagine if and so even if you're pro-abortion, that is a truth you cannot run from. And so if you're lying there, people aren't going to believe that you. If you're lying there, the other thing you should tell the truth about, you should tell the truth about the racist beginnings of the abortion industry. I don't believe that the women and men that work in the abortion industry and work for Planned Parenthood today are virulent racists bent on eugenics. I don't believe that at all, right? I bet there's probably not one. I bet you that I think there are less racists working at Planned Parenthood than BLM thinks, because they think they're probably, if they're white, they're structurally racist. I do believe they are participating in a structure of racism, no doubt. The abortion industry is a structure of racism, but I do not believe that the people working in the abortion industry today desire the eradication of blacks in America. I don't believe that. But there is no, you might disagree with me. Would you agree with me? There's nobody in Planned Parenthood right now who's like, I want to exterminate.
I think the typical abortion worker is not that, but still the model stands.
That's right.
The planning that Margaret Sanger did. Where do you find Planned Parenthood? Usually on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, usually in minority neighborhoods. And if you go to the rich neighborhoods, you find the fertility clinics.
The neighborhood my dad lived in Chicago, Brian, was a lily white neighborhood. And now it's not. And I'm telling you, as soon as it went from white to black neighborhood, guess who opened up shop?
Planned Parenthood.
Bing, bang, boom. Right. So it doesn't matter. You may want to pick an apple tree, but if they're if it's a peach tree, you're not going to make apple juice from it. And but they need to, first of all, purge Margaret Sanger's name from everything. Rip that Band-Aid off.
Absolutely.
They need to acknowledge that this industry was founded for eugenic purposes. And that's just a fact.
They will fight to take down a Lincoln statue and to save a Margaret Sanger statue. That's what's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling, right? It's unbelievable. And they'll talk about, I've written on, I believe there's structural racism in America. The obvious first place to look is the abortion industry.
Absolutely. Right?
So I don't believe America's a racist country. I believe there's structures of racism that exist inside our country. The other would be, we talk about mass shootings when they happen in white neighborhoods, but in Chicago, there are mass shootings every day.
Absolutely.
And we don't talk about those mass shootings. The media does not cover that. We're not allowed to report on the violence that children have to suffer in black neighborhoods in Chicago. But if there's a mass shooting in a white neighborhood at a parade, we talk about that. But you can look at the number of people that were shot in Chicago, the rest of the city in the same weekend. It's more people. So there are definitely structures of racism.
But we turn these mass shooters into celebrities.
Do we, though?
I think we do.
Who?
I think I mean, if you talk about Cremo right now, everybody knows that name, and everyone wants to post his picture everywhere, and all this stuff. It's like, don't.
So tell me about what was motivated? I fear he was motivated by leftist extremism because they're hiding his motives. They're saying there were no motives.
Oh, absolutely. And
so what motives what do we know?
This is what I believe, Jason, and this is something that maybe not everyone agrees with, and I hear a lot of people who are, and I'm pro Second Amendment. I am pro Second Amendment, but I personally believe, to go drive a car, I have to get a license. If I want to then drive a bus, I have to get a different license. If I then want to drive a semi, I have to get a different license. I have to be trained. I have to know what I'm doing. I think having training and proper handling care and stuff like that for gun ownership is something that's good. I don't want to take away people's guns, but I think that we should have some kind of proper training and such in that. And I know that's a hot issue, but I believe it's mental health. If you or me were to tell anyone, oh, I've got cancer, we would have the most sympathy in the world. People would do GoFundMes. People would do everything they can to help us. But if we said, oh, I've got a mental health issue, I've got bipolar, we're suddenly second-class citizens. We're suddenly pushed to the side. We have to talk about mental health and the fact that these kids, and I think, Jason, these kids can't handle the problems of today because they're raised on pillows. Like, they have to walk on pillows, and they can't like step down a stair without making sure you're connected to we're raising wimps.
But is that it, or are we though? Okay, I want to backtrack on that. So what time? We've been talking an hour and a half, Mr. Kemper. So, but I like when I get to disagree with my guests that I admire. So,
but dude, think about
I don't
this.
think though. I think the whole culture is a landmine culture.
But it's also, if my kid, like I've told my sons, I said at school there's now zero tolerance. If you, no matter what, you even defend yourself, you're suspended, you're kicked out of school. And I've told my sons, if you see a girl get picked on, if you see some, kid get picked on, a girl get touched, you better get suspended. You better get suspended for defending them. And young men are being told that that's toxic masculinity if they defend a woman. We're raising just wimps, I think, in some ways. You aren't, obviously. You aren't.
No, but let's say this, Brian. No, I mean, I homeschool my children, and my children are wild. I had a mother come to my house a couple months ago saying that my son had hit her son with a stick. And I said, yeah, didn't your son hit my son with a shovel first? And she said, yeah, but he cracked him really hard with a stick. I said, oh, well, so my boys are allowed to defend themselves. And I said that they never want to see how angry I can become if I find out they hit somebody first, picked on somebody, made someone feel bad about themselves, bullied anyone.
Or didn't defend someone.
I said, but you and I said, I was looking out the window and I saw what happened. And your son hit my boy with the shovel. My son grabbed, a broom handle and whacked the boy in the head. I said, and furthermore, you're lucky my older boys weren't here. Because I said, if any one of them gets hit, they all should respond together in delivering retribution. Yep. So I told so you're lucky the older boys didn't see it because they would have jumped in delivering retribution on your child. So just tell your little bully kid never to even look at my house again. So that's how my kids are raised. But
now, Jason, does you think that comes from island culture? Because I have a good friend, Tua Meafua, Samoan guy.
Yeah, I think it comes from island culture, brother. Yeah.
I'm telling
that's
you,
Hawaii. That's Hawaii. You don't.
Tua, raised in Samoa, he remembered his sister came home one day and some guy had hit her. And the dad looks at all the boys and says, don't come home until it's taken care of.
Yeah, because my parents, I got in a lot of fights as a kid. And I was always my fault. To be honest, it was my fault. But my parents never assumed, they knew it was my fault. Like it was never like I would always be envious of parents who took their kid's side. Like some parent would come and say, your son beat up my kid. And they'd go, yeah, okay, we know. It was never like, well, who started it? Never. It was, yeah, okay.
Jason, we know it's always your fault.
It probably was. But in Hawaii, you're right. But the other thing about island culture is this. There was a book I purchased when I was in New Zealand a couple of years ago, written by a Kiwi surfer, about how Hawaii was the most violent place he had ever been, and how it was worse than Lebanon when he was literally kidnapped by terrorists. But they said that his experience with violence was worse. So I'm like, I got to get this book. This sounds crazy. And I read the book, and like you were a missionary in Hawaii, so you get this. This guy was going around running his mouth, insulting people, and getting beat up. Like all this, but he never got that he was at fault. In Hawaii, no one will ever, almost never, start with you. Ever.
No, they'll look right at you and go, you got beef, brah? And
right.
This is straight up.
And beef,
they didn't have,
yeah, right.
And
so
I learned real quick that's the time to stand down.
Stand down. Just be a gentleman. Be polite. Don't.
Yep.
There was someone, I'm not going to say his name, someone we mutually know who came to Hawaii. We were at this bar that was the toughest bar in Hawaii, and my friends own it. And you do not, and I'm not kidding you, the bartenders, the woman who owns it with her husband, the bartender, was a pro.
Do they even allow haoles in there?
If they're with me, yeah, they allow haoles in there. Come on. They wouldn't know to go there, though. But we were there with someone you and I both know. And I'll tell you offline. And this guy's, I don't like the guy at all, but he was in Hawaii, and I was a gentleman and showed him around. So he shouts out loud. And just so you know, the bartender owner was a pro MMA fighter who's just tough. The men that are the waiters there are amateur and or pro MMA fighters, for real. And this guy stands up, and everyone there's tough, but kind and loving, and it's a beautiful place. Just don't be a punk. He stands up and says, yo, this band sucks.
Oh, my God.
And I turned to him and I said, bro, they're going to beat you to death, man. I said, look, you're lucky no one heard you because A, this band is great, and B, why would you say that? And C, they're related to half the people in this bar. And he's like, well, what, can I voice my opinion? I'm like, you can. He's like, you'll protect me.
You better be able to back it up.
He said, you're going to protect me. I'm like, bro, I'm going to be holding you down for them. I said, don't say it again. And so that is Hawaii. And so that is, look, I will be much more strict on my children for initiating violence than any woke parent would be. I would be horrified. I snapped at my son the other day because he made a joke about a neighbor kid who beat up his sister. He made a joke about it. It happened to our neighbor. And I said, son, I never once thought of striking my sisters as a young boy. I said, I wouldn't have thought to even make a joke about it. My friends wouldn't mention my sisters' names. They would say, Jason, the girl that shall remain nameless, is she going with us to the Little League field? Like, they would be afraid to say her name because if I thought it was being disrespectful, I'd beat them up.
Oh, absolutely.
So I said to my boys, like, you can't even think of this, but but I want to go back to this. The woke culture, I used to be like you, like this generation's weak and they're soft, but I think it's the opposite. I think they're fragile because they've been made fragile because they have no protection. They have no protection from pornography. They have no protection from woke culture. They get bullied. We say that we're all this nonsense about no bullying, no bullying, no bullying. They bully each other 24/7. You remember, you said you were bullied. I thought I was bullied, and then later on people said I was the bully. I always thought I was the anti-bully, but to the people I was, beefing with, they saw me as the bully. I saw them as the bully. But you'd go home and you'd shut the door and you'd be like, that's done for today. But these kids, they go to sleep in the Instagram and the TikTok, and they don't even have to have it, but the people are talking about them, or they could take a picture of them doing something stupid at school. I think that we don't protect these kids. These kids have been inundated. They're being attacked from every single direction. And so they're fragile, but I don't think they're weak. I just think that they're vulnerable, exposed, and fragile. What do you think of that? But it's not their fault. It's our fault, right?
I may disagree a bit.
But it's our fault.
Still, yeah.
It's not their fault. It's our fault, right? If I go to the Home Depot and buy a tree and a bush, and I plant the bush, and I don't water it, and I don't fertilize it, and I don't treat it properly, and it becomes weak and dies, it's my fault. If we have a generation of children that are scared and confused and conformists, it's because we never allowed them the comfort to have an independent mind and to speak boldly and not to live in constant fear of being terrorized for having a diverse opinion.
Absolutely. And it's also teaching them, like, it may not be completely the same, but I had an incident. My son was online playing a video, like this car soccer game that they play, and his sister got on, and the other one of the other kids started making some very rude comments to his sister. And I told my son, I'm like, listen, no, you speak up right now. This is your sister. You never allow that kind of thing. And he's like, oh, it's just people talking on a video game. I'm like, no, it's not. This is an attack on your sister.
Yeah, the way they talk on those video games is absolutely unbelievable. I think most parents don't even understand. Like my boys, they play, and of course they're mixed race, and all their friends are mixed race. And I mean, I have to admit, I chuckle what they say about each other and to each other, but you're like, they're not dropping up. My kids, they're always picking fun of each other over each other's ethnicity. When COVID came out, they were blaming my kids for the rise of COVID, and then their Japanese friends, they were like, we're just getting revenge for Pearl Harbor, and then their Polish friend. They have like a very diverse community of friends just growing up in Hawaii. And I listened, and Hawaii's humor is all based on ethnicity because it was so diverse, but they loved each other and intermarried and partied together, but they're always making jokes at each other. And so I'm listening to my boys on their video games, and I'm like, that's kind of harsh. I said, guys, if I record that and tweet out at you, I'm going to get you canceled. You'll be canceled for life. But no, we have to shelter these young. I just don't know how we put the genie back in the box with the way technology is just. My wife told me that there's a school.
It's hard balance to shelter and educate at the same time.
Yeah,
that's a hard balance.
My wife told me, I don't know if it's true or not. She just said it. She probably saw it in Good Morning America. She believed it, but she said, babe, there's a school in San Francisco where all the .com billionaires send their kids. They are not allowed to have any social media or cell phones until they graduate high school.
Dude, that would be great. That's probably my biggest regret.
Think about that. The creators of this technology, are like, yeah, not for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to make it as addictive as possible for your kids. But our kids, that's why we're number one school on our list for sending our kids is Wyoming Catholic. The most attractive, that they have horseback riding as a class is pretty cool, but that they're not allowed cell phones until graduation. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, no cell phones. Do not bring your phones to campus. Yep.
That is awesome.
Isn't it? All right, Mr. Kemper, we've talked for 2 hours. I feel like I've been doing all these shows with all these heroes, and I feel like I haven't even drawn out enough. What have I not asked you? Well,
I'm going to be a little shameless plug here. My new book, which you actually wrote a review for, Pro-Life is the New Punk Rock. I would love for people to want to read that book. It's available at prolifeproducts.org or standtrue.com. But, Jason, I think that one of the most important things that we can say to the pro-life movement right now is don't take too deep of a breath right now. Don't take too deep of a breath. I know that we've been celebrating and we're so excited and we're so pumped over what just happened with Dobbs v. Jackson and the overturning of Roe. But Jason, I've been in this for 35 years and I count that as preseason. That's been preseason. The season has now begun. The true season. We're not close to the Super Bowl yet. We're not. Preseason is over. It's now time to really put the rubber to the road and fight against child killing and truly abolish abortion and make it unthinkable. We can't take too deep of a breath. And I think some people are, let's just relax now. No, because the other side is not going to relax for 1 millisecond. And we cannot either. We must push forward and continue to answer questions and put truth out there and expose the abortion lie for what it is and make sure that people really look at abortion the same way they look back at slavery, the same way they look back at the Nazi Holocaust. That's what abortion must become in society for us to really say that we've done our job. And we've got a long way to go.
We do, and it's preseason, but for us it might be, I don't know, we might be put out to pasture because these young people are so sincere, so firm in their belief and their convictions, unwavering, who are pro-life. And the other side, they seem lost, bewildered, confused, unable to defend their own positions. They can only resort to gaslighting and bullying. So, but I agree with you. We need to step it up. That's why I'm doing 49 shows in a row, and I greenlit my next movie, which is a pro-life movie, Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. And
excellent, brother.
And
excellent.
So, Bryan,
but I'll tell you, these shows are important, Jason, because when I sit down with young people, I tell you, they love to hear the stories. They want to know how this all got to where we're at. They love those stories, and I think it's important that we continue to share those stories with people.
No, you're right, Bryan. Like this podcast, I started doing it because I have interesting friends, and I thought I could record them. When I first started doing the Jason Jones show, it was like I can call people that are my friends, talk with them, and just have it housed somewhere so my grandchildren can listen to it, and maybe a few people would listen. There have been weeks we've been in the top 20 podcasts in America. We usually hover around top 200. If I do one show a week, we'll be in top 200. 2 shows a week, we'll be in the top 100. And when I have big name guests, we've cracked the top 20. And
the thing is, Jason, it's important because one day your grandchildren, your great grandchildren are going to sit on your lap and they're going to say, Grandpa Jason, where were you when they were killing babies? What did you do? And that's an important thing, to be able to answer that question in a way that you feel proud of, that you can let your grandkids, your great grandkids know that you stood up, you spoke up. And these stories and these recordings are going to be a great way for you to show that to younger people in the next generation.
Oh, and when we wrap this up, which I think will be in about 10 years, from sea to shining sea, human life protected from biological beginning through natural death, it's going to be about 10 more years, what I predict. When I was in college, and I was there was a symposium on Buddhism and abortion, and I went, and I was the only one with a pro-life voice there. I was just an undergrad. And I don't know how it ended up at this, but it ended up at me in the front of the classroom, and it was like an amphitheater, standing on the desk, lecturing all these PhDs and PhD candidates. And I had said at one point that, and they were laughing, like, you're never going to end abortion. Roe versus Wade will never overturn. I said, not only, I remember this, I said, not only will we see in my lifetime full legal protection for the child in the womb from the violence of abortion, but then I will go on to document the history, and I am going to put the names of the advocates of abortion in the history books where they belong, next to the advocates of slavery, next to the advocates of segregation, next to the architects of the Nazi Holocaust. And I believe what we're starting to see is they know the tide is turning. They know the spirit of the age is changing. They know that the gods of the city that they've worshipped have died, and they're worshiping a dead God. They're dancing to sheet music that has gone out of style and not even thoughtless to the transcendent truth, but just at the fickleness of human society. They know that the band has marched on and they're out of step, and they're going to be judged by history. Not just put God aside, they're going to be judged by history. And I think that, do you think that might be why we see on the other side a hesitancy? They're not as in the wake of Roe, they threw a tantrum. Some radical groups are throwing tantrums, but I feel like the mainstream left is just kind of confused and standing, like staring like into the
Jason,
sun. Like, where do we go from here?
I want to offer you a thought on that. And I think part of it is when the pro-life movement first started, it was completely centered on faith and religion. And that's really what a lot of people were like, whatever, that's just a Christian thing. That's just a Christian thing. But today, for 99% of the arguments that you use when you're talking about abortion and pro-life are based on science and biology and facts. And so many of these young pro-lifers don't use religion in any way whatsoever, but use truth and science and biology. And the other side is trying desperately to force religion back as the main issue. But they can't, because it's not about religion. It's about truth. It's about science. It's about fact. And I see the other side as the ones who always bring up the religious aspect now, because then they could argue. It's
their religious right. They say they're making religious arguments. No, this comedian that just got doxxed, that's a great point, Mr. Kemper. Their arguments now are all religious. Well, this violates our religion. Well, how about this? The comedian that was just canceled from Netflix, who's going to make so much money for doing the right thing, one of his jokes in his bits in his routine that they wanted him to remove to go on Netflix, he said, do you remember when we used to have abortions? You'd look at the ultrasound, you just thought you were like removing gray snow from the womb. We just thought we were removing gray snow. I mean, now we know we're killing a baby, because, I mean, you see it, it's a baby. And that's that. The science has moved on. Technology has moved on. Knowledge has moved on. I mean, I remember, I think it was in 1967, the first really beautiful picture of a preborn child was on the cover of Life magazine. It was a book, A Child is Born, that was in my home, my family home as a child, that had all these beautiful photographs, and this is in the early 80s, mid-80s, of early childhood development that made abortion utterly unthinkable for me. I was inoculated to being pro-abortion, not from religion. I'd never been to church. It was from just a coffee table book on prenatal development that was lying around our house. And so that book inoculated me from the propaganda of the abortion industry. But every kid under, I guess, 35, the first picture they have of themselves is a beautiful picture of themselves in the womb of their mother.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like you said, that has become their religion. They're the ones who are being religious, and it's become their religion. And you cannot argue the science anymore. You can't argue against it. And so they have to bring everything else into it. That's one of the most difficult and frustrating things about debating somebody who is pro-choice, who's pro-abortion, is they won't talk about abortion. They will only talk about other things. You can't get them to actually talk about, excuse me, abortion itself and the act itself, because they know that that's not defendable.
It's not defendable. No, the only way I guess their best argument they have now is laws protecting preborn children from being dismembered violate the religious freedom rights of Satanists. I mean, that's they're literally making that argument. Exactly.
And they can't even use their own arguments with bodily autonomy, because they destroyed that during the pandemic, when even the ACLU said bodily autonomy is not monumental. It isn't, and they had to say that because if you talk about bodily autonomy when it comes to getting an injection, then you lose your bodily autonomy, and you have to do it because you could protect other people. And it's like we throw that right back at them, and they won't talk. Their mind explodes. It's like scanners. Their head just goes crazy.
What if Fauci came out and said they had to have came out against abortion? I wonder if they'd be for it. I wonder if they'd be for it. If that's the only man that's allowed to tell them what to do with their body.
Well, I said yesterday on Twitter, I said, if we use guns to perform abortions, would the left suddenly be pro-life, or would they suddenly be pro-Second Amendment? Like, because it's just a different tool to do the exact same job. That's all it is. It's a different tool to do the exact same job.
I just shared a meme, which I probably shouldn't have shared because it kind of struck close to home. A friend of mine's wife miscarried after having the COVID vaccine. And the meme, a friend of mine took a picture of a sign at like a high school soccer field or a softball field. Someone put up on the backstop, and it said, "Want an abortion? Get the COVID vaccine."
Wow.
Yeah, kind of sad. You know, Brian, we talked more about Filipino food than rock music and the pro-life rock band. So I'm going to have you back on because I need to sell pillows. Do you have any pillows? Do you have any MyPillow pillows?
I have a MyPillow, absolutely.
Did you use the code Jones?
No, he just sent us one. He sent to everybody at Priest for Life.
Mike Lindell. How am I supposed to sell pillows to Bryan Kemper when you're getting them free?
Sell me sheets. I don't have the sheets yet.
Okay, Giza Dream sheets, Brian. You want to stay with me? Let's wrap this up. You going to stay on for the end, or are you going to drop off? Because I got to go shoot kids with airsoft pellets.
Hey, I got to go. I got a lot of yard work to do. It's a good Saturday to get some yard work done. But Jason, it's been such an honor to do this, and we got to talk more. And I need to come to Texas and have your wife start cooking me some good Filipino food.
Dude, you're in trouble. You just got me in big trouble.
Why is that?
She doesn't listen to the show. My ex-wife I was married at 18. My oldest two children are probably, my wife's Chinese.
Come on. You're not going to be in trouble. You're not going to be in trouble.
You are so lucky. She doesn't listen to my podcast. She has not ever read an article that I've written. No, she's probably read a few articles. She only read the first chapter of my book. All of my son's 12-year-old friends have read my book.
Oh, yeah. My son's like, hey, my friends want copies of your book. Can I have some? I'm like, go ahead.
My wife didn't even read my book. So you're lucky. If she would have heard that, she'd have been, Bryan Kemper. It's a Modern Family. It's what it is, what it is. What it is, what it is. Before you cause me any more trouble, I'm going to sell pillows. I'm going to sell Epoch Times, and I'm going to tell folks about. And your book, Punk is the new. We need
pro-life is the new punk rock.
Yeah, but punk rock's old, my brother.
I'm old.
I know. We know what you mean.
This month. I turned 55 this month, and I start getting all this stuff in the mail, which I used to dread, and I'm like, oh, wait, I get 20% off? Yep, I'm 55. Proudly 55. We get 20% off.
What do you get 20% off at 55? What do you get in 20%? I'm going to be 50.
I just threw a number out there. I'm just saying, is you get discounts galore when you're a senior. I'm like, call me a senior.
Well, come on. We're not seniors.
I'm not allowed to hit you. I know. I on the golf course, I can't go to the senior tees yet until I'm 65. So I still have to.
But we have to be honest. Like our grandparents at 55 looked really old. But that's because cottage cheese was their health food. Like how bad?
Yeah.
Like when cottage cheese is your health food.
No.
Yeah, I'm eating healthy. This is my grandma. I'm eating healthy. I'm waking up and I'm having a little cottage cheese with my coffee, and I'm smoking filtered cigarettes now.
And drinking Diet Coke with my two Big
Drinking
Macs.
Tab while I'm spraying Roundoff on my daisies. Okay, Grandma.
Yeah.
Great, Grandma. I don't know how that's going to work. But don't worry. Your toys are painted with lead. We're all good here.
See, my health food now is whatever I can make on my smoker.
I don't know. What is that, asparagus?
Oh, dude, smoking some ribs, smoking some pork tenderloin.
I need to have my development director from the Vulnerable People Project talk to you about our endowment program. Estate planning. Right. You keep eating that way, and we're gonna talk to you about your estate planning and how you can support the Vulnerable People Project.
Dude,
when you move on.
You remember when I used to weigh like 330 pounds?
I don't.
Huge.
I don't remember.
Dude, I was huge. And
when did you weigh 300? When did you weigh 300?
In the 90s, dude. I was 330 pounds. I didn't look it, but I was over 330 pounds when I left Rock for Life. I was at least 335.
You did not look it. That's crazy.
Oh, I know, but I was. And do you know how I lost it? Eating street tacos. Street tacos. Lengua, cow tongue, cilantro, and onions on a corn tortilla. I ate the crud out of that. It's one of my favorite foods in the world. I could eat it every meal, and that's what. Eating that and cutting out all the cheese and all the other garbage.
You got to cut out alcohol too, which I don't do. I don't cut out. I need to cut out alcohol.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear a word.
You cut out French fries until abortion ends.
Yes, I did.
So you're eating fries now? I mean,
I did celebrate with some fries at the overturning of Roe, but I'm also need to not eat fries healthy wise.
So my daughter launched this initiative until abortion ends, like 12 years ago, I guess, or so. And the reason that we launched it was because people are like, abortion's never going to end. We're like, we want them to know abortion's going to end. So we're willing to give up something until that happens.
And I think I'm one of the very few people on the planet that did that kept with it for 12 years.
My daughter kept with it. I did not. So I gave up everything but water to drink. And then I made it 3 years. And by the way, I went from like 240 to like 210. You could look in 4 months. I looked great.
Did Joseph Lip, he gave up ice cream, right?
He did.
How long did that last for him?
It lasted until abortion ends. Yeah.
Excellent.
But
Excellent.
so what happened with me? I got to justify why I jumped off the bandwagon. So at 3 years, my 3-year anniversary, my wife was like, it was during my wedding anniversary. After doing this for about 3 years, she said, "Do you know the sacrifice? Because it's not a sacrifice after a while. You just drink water, and it's fine. Like the thought of having something else is actually disgusting." And I lost a lot of weight. I never felt better. My back pain went away. It was great. But my wife said, "This is a bigger sacrifice for those of us around you who would like a glass of wine with you from time to time." And I said, "Okay, I'll just drink wine with you from time to time." And she said, "Well, I'd like a cup of coffee with you in the morning. When we're outside in the patio, I'd like you to." So I thought, okay. And it was really kind of a sacrifice at this point to give up the sacrifice. My daughter said, "Dad, you just picked the wrong thing. You should have been a little more narrow in your selection." But she
picked iPods, and iPods were out of business 2 years later.
Well, no, it was just all portable music players.
All portable, okay.
So she has not listened to portable music. And by the way, for her, that was a huge sacrifice because she was taking a bus to and from college. And she had like 2 hours of bus rides each way, each day. So it's 4 hours where she went from listening to music to just twiddling her thumbs. And so I was really impressed. There was another guy he gave up sleeping in a bed until abortion ends, and he kept it. And I remember thinking, oh no. I said to him, when he first contacted me that he was doing this, because my daughter was on Tosh.0, if you remember. And
I was on there with her.
Oh, that's right. You guys were on Tosh together. So a lot of people saw it, and Tosh actually basically revealed he was pro-life during the episode. You'd have to be blind to miss that.
Oh, yeah.
But
kind of like a certain Sticks and Stones show.
Sticks and Stones?
A certain comedian that lives in my state.
Oh, yeah. A lot of
about abortion that was really pro-life, if you think about it.
So was Chris Rock's, the Clear Heels. We should do a whole show about the esoteric expressions of pro-life convictions by Hollywood stars and musicians. Because
absolutely,
to avoid cancel culture.
You can look at Iron Maiden's 2 Minutes to Midnight. You can look at Slayer's Silent
Sex Pistols,
Scream.
Bodies.
Oh, dude, I had a cigar with Johnny Rotten and talked about it, you know? It absolutely, there were so many in those days that are pro-life. The Cranberries, Icicle Melts, an amazing pro-life song.
Yep. And openly pro-life. So here's what we're going to do. I'm doing 49 shows in a row. Maybe in the coming weeks, let's do a whole show on expressions of pro-life convictions through music and film and comedy. We can do a whole show on that.
Let's do it, man.
All right, Mr. Kemper. This was a 2-hour marathon. So you jump off. I'm gonna land the plane and look forward to talking to you soon.
God bless you, brother. Talk to you later.
Peace out. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the end. If you listen to the end, that means you like the show or you work for Alan Guttmacher Institute. Give us 5 stars, write a review. And remember, the show is being brought to you by MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell has been a strong advocate for life. I see there is no better way to celebrate this victory of opening the door to a culture of life that we saw with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We got to walk through that door. Then celebrating over at MyPillow.com and buying yourself a victory pillow and some sheets, Giza Dream sheets. It's summer. Now you need the pillow, and now you need the sheets. You know you need it. Go to MyPillow.com, use the code Jones. You're going to get the best price available with that code, Jones. Also, Epoch Times. The mainstream media does nothing but gaslight and deceive. Agenda set and hide the truth. If you want the truth and an easy one-stop place to go every morning, and it's Epoch Times. So go to ireadepoch.com, use the code Jason Jones, and get yourself a subscription. Epoch Times is the first place I go every day, and you should too. And this episode is being brought to you by the Vulnerable People Project. The Vulnerable People Project advocates for the vulnerable and serves the vulnerable when it is most challenging. And we can only do that with your help. This very week, we have a medical center that's being rebuilt in rural Afghanistan to serve women because the local authorities, after the collapse of the Taliban, decreed that only men can use the hospital that was there. So we're building a medical center for women. We're refurbishing a center. We're drilling a well there as well. Also, at a girls' school in Afghanistan and at a university, we are this very week installing security cameras, and we have hired security crews to provide security. And that's something we will be doing this year. Our goal is to provide cameras and security guards at all of the schools that are still operating in Afghanistan. That is on top of our, of course, sheltering thousands of SIVs and others, and our program to resettle as many Afghans who qualify, religious minorities and others who are facing mortal danger, those who served alongside the U.S. Armed Forces. That we can only do that with you. We can only advocate for the Uyghur. You know, our organization, I credit with, we were the first ones to call for a boycott of Top Gun because they, the CCP, leaned on the producers to digitally remove Hong Kong and Taiwan's flag. That flag was put back. Taiwan's flag was put back. We worked hard for years and years leading up to the genocide designation for the Uyghur and Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. But unfortunately, the world is on fire. We need to build out our Africa operations. There's a lot of work to be done in Nigeria and Ethiopia. We need to do that as well. So you need to go to thegreatcampaign.org and look at what we do. Go to thegreatcampaign.org and look at what we do, and then ask yourself, is this the apostolate you want to support? And I think it is. And if you just like this podcast, the best way to support us is by becoming a monthly donor to the Vulnerable People Project at thegreatcampaign.org, our sponsor. I'm the founder and president. I founded this podcast to talk about whatever. So when you're not paying attention, I can advocate for those facing genocide, democide, and total war. All right? Until next time, which will be like tomorrow. This has been Jason Jones with Bryan Kemper. Aloha.